Hey everyone, welcome to the Giving Town podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Roberts, and before we get started today, I want to let you know that our team, the Joyful Roberts Group, sends out a free newsletter twice each month with content like this podcast, videos from our Living in Newberg YouTube channel, plus homeowner tips, investor insights, and senior resources. So if you're interested in that type of content, you can subscribe using the link in the show notes. Well, today I'm excited to share my conversation with Amy Wolff, the founder of the Don't Give Up movement. What began in May 2017 as an impulse to plant 20 yard signs around Newberg has exploded into a global movement. So in this episode, we'll be sharing the origins of the movement. We'll be learning about the science of hope, which is the framework that she laid out in her TED Talk, and the crazy journey that led Amy to where she is today. You'll hear life-saving stories, lessons on balancing big vision with small acts, and the importance of agency when it comes to making a change. Amy, thanks so much for joining me today on the Giving Town podcast.
Glad to be here. Actually, I have a fun fact. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
My mom was on your podcast last month.
Wait, who's your mom? I know your mother-in-law, but I don't know who's your mom.
Di Endicott with the Mayor's Prayer.
I didn't know that was your mom.
Yep,
Oh,
actually.
you hid that from me until we just started.
Also scrolled through all your podcast interviews, and I can't even tell you, if you live in Newberg long enough, I feel like you can trace back connections to every single person we've interviewed. So my very first kiss in high school, his dad, I'm not going to say who, you interviewed. One of my good friends, Elise Yarnile Holloman with Community Wellness Collective a while back. My mother-in-law is best friends with Lonnie Parrish. You did a couple episodes with her and Scott. Provoking Hope out of McMinnville as a grandma founded it. And I mentored her granddaughters when they lost their brother, because I lost my brother when I was young. I mean, there's so many.
It's so funny. You hid that all from me. We've been talking for like 20 minutes before we started. And he was like,
dude, but it's a fun surprise. Is Newberg, really, if you stick around.
Yeah. Wow, so you kind of had no choice but to do something big and Newberg with that buzz connection.
My daughters are really funny. With all the things that we're going to talk about today, they'll say, Mom, you're so famous. And I'll tell them or correct them, I'm Newberg famous, but I'm not Portland, Oregon famous. But I'm Newberg. I'll claim maybe Newberg famous. Just been around a long time.
Yeah, that's funny. People will kind of say the same to me. I'm like, I only have like 650 subscribers. So like once someone asked like, oh, how many subscribers do you have on your YouTube channel? I said like, oh, 650. Like 650,000. I was like, no. Like 650 actual. That's funny. Well, that's so fun. So many fun connections. I had no idea. We should have like what is it? Like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, but like 6 degrees of probably don't even need 6. Probably 3 degrees of the Giving Town podcast. That's right. That's funny. All right. Well, that is a fun surprise, but let's get on to why people are actually listening. So 8 years is how long, and we'll get into the Don't Give Up movement, which to me still feels kind of recent, but when I stop and think, I'm like, okay, it's been a while.
It's a long time.
But there's probably some people listening to this who don't even know what it is, though. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of it, are familiar. But for those who haven't heard, what is the Don't Give Up movement and how did it get started?
Sure. So in April of 2017, I was hanging out with some friends on a Wednesday night. We were sipping coffee, sitting on couches. And Mark Johnson is now a high school teacher here at Newberg High School. At the time, he was teaching in St. Paul, and he said, Amy, have you guys heard of the suicide rates in our area? And I don't even remember the statistic or what he said. I just remember just almost like everything paused. Like, whoa, it was overwhelming and a lot of heavy emotions. And we talked about it a little bit, and then the conversation moved on, and I was stuck. Like, oh my gosh, I am a doer. So I was like, what can I do? And the problem is, not an expert, not a mental health expert, didn't struggle with my own self-harm ideation, not in the schools, I'm just a young mom, business owner. There's nothing I can do. But I had this idea of yard signs for a couple years after reading Bob Goff's book, Love Does. Have you read it?
Yeah. I think, I'm trying to remember. I'm pretty sure I read that one. I don't know if I finished it.
That's fair.
But yeah.
So I read that book and I had this really wild idea, stupid idea actually, of these yard signs that said, don't give up.
Okay.
And that's it.
Now you had that idea before.
Years.
So, okay.
Years before. And every time I'd imagine these yard signs, I would think that is the dumbest thing. And I just would forget it. Yeah. But then it pop up in my mind, like throughout the years. So that night I went home and I talked to my husband, Jake, and I said, I have this idea. Do you think we should just post these yard signs I've been thinking about for so long around Newberg? And Jake was all in. He's like, sure. So I reached out on Facebook. Hey, Newberg, anybody know where to find yard signs, custom yard signs? And Jessica Bertel, one of the co-owners of the Lure shop downtown Portland.
Okay.
I met her at George Fox, said, well, I have access. What do you need? She designed and printed 20 yard signs for us. All the backs said, don't give up. All the fronts, half of them said, you are worthy of love. And the other half said, your mistakes don't define you. So a couple of weeks later, it's May 2017. It's a rainy Saturday afternoon. My husband buckles our 2 young daughters in their car seats at the time. 8 years ago was a long time ago. They're now grown. But we started going around Newberg, knocking on strangers' doors, specifically around the schools.
Okay.
And my heart was racing. I'm a people person, but this is a very weird ask.
Yeah.
So I remember dragging my young daughter out of the back seat thinking she would be lovable. She would make a good first impression. So I knocked on the door. Hey, we're just a young family trying to do something. There's no website. This isn't religious. This is not an organization. It's not political. We're just trying to do something. Would you put this sign in your yard for 2 weeks and we'll come back and pick it up? And all of them said yes. I remember driving home that day thinking, number one, this is a really bad idea. This will help nobody. This was a desperate attempt to do something and it's going to do nothing. And it's embarrassing. Yeah. But number two, it was anonymous. So who cares? No one's going to know it's me. So we go home and a couple hours later, I get a message from a neighbor. We lived in the Greens at the time.
Okay.
A neighbor messaged me, hey, Newberg Community Facebook page is blowing up. People are noticing the signs, taking pictures, and they're curious where it came from. Was it you? And I sent a group request to join whatever community Facebook page it was. And it took 24 hours for an admin to let me in. And it was the longest 24 hours. And I finally got in there and started scrolling and it was important to people.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my gosh. So we decided to come out of anonymity.
I think that's right.
Yeah, sure. And share, hey, we're just a young family, but if you want yard signs, we'll buy more and we'll sell them at cost to you. That was a little bit of a mistake. It blew up, got overwhelmed, didn't know how to get payments from strangers and where to distribute them. So within a couple of weeks, we had a website.
Okay.
Within a couple of weeks after that, we had a bank account and it exploded.
Which is fast.
Actually. Oh, so fast. It became a disaster quickly. It needed solutions. And then within 18 months, we were in all 50 states and over 27 countries.
Wow. 18 months?
In a year and a half, wow. We were everywhere. And not just yard signs. We started to make car decals. Maybe some of you have seen these or have them on your cars. Stickers, pins, pencils, a ton of stuff. Mini yard signs.
Yeah. So backing up just a little bit, you mentioned the idea had come, so I guess 2015, you read Bob Goff's book.
Yeah.
So how did what in that book led you to say, hey, yard signs is something I want to do?
Well, I don't know if it was yard signs or something I want to do, but it was the random idea of yard signs. It just didn't form into action.
Sure.
His book is about showing extravagant love in really random, radical, and sometimes extravagant ways. And I don't know, there was something in that was inspiring to think way outside the box, and yard signs were just so random. What I recognized when everything did hit the fan and grew super fast and so cool that it started here in Newberg. But what hit me was that the yard signs were actually genius, and they were genius because they were big. They sat on the side of the road. They were surprising. There was shock value. You're just commuting to work. And then suddenly you see a sign out of the middle of nowhere that says something important to you. And there was no agenda.
Yeah.
Which leads to some challenges and big decisions we had to make as we started to scale bigger. But evidently yard signs were kind of genius.
Yeah. So what did you expect? You did it, what did you think was going to happen?
Nothing.
Okay. So you thought you put them in, hear nothing, and then
See
2
you
weeks
later.
later just take them back down?
I did. And that's obviously not what happened. But as we went, there were some things that were surprising. So yes, one, the reaction. Number two, the signs were really simple enough where they weren't suicide prevention. They weren't necessarily even mental health related. We added new messages like you matter, one day at a time, you are enough. In COVID, we rolled out, we're all in this together. And people were having these moments when they were driving down the street, minding their own business, and they would see these simple yard signs, and it would resonate for different reasons. So within a few months, we got emails. I'm going through a divorce. I just got a diagnosis. I had a really rough day at work. So I'm trying to leave an abusive relationship. I struggle with depression. There were so many reasons and responses of why these messages resonated with people that we were surprised that it became way more than the catalyst of mental health. So in that case, we were surprised by the scale that people chose hope for their situation. We were also surprised when people started copying us. That wasn't a very good surprise. I remember when someone sent me a website and it was copy and paste verbatim all of our content on their website.
Interesting.
Good young guy, good heart, good intentions, poor impact. Felt really bad to see someone just copy. So our request is always that people join us, not copy us, but we're not going to copy. Someone said copyright or something. I'm not copywriting hope on a sign. So some surprises of well-meaning people but it felt a little dishonoring, and that happened a bunch.
Okay.
And I would say the final surprise was the negative response we got. Probably within the last 8 years, as you mentioned, we probably had only a handful of emails, but it was seeing your sign that said, don't give up, made me feel shame for wanting to give up. And it made me feel worse. And those were hard because I don't want to dismiss someone's experience that is true and real. And I'm getting the opposite response, hundreds of messages for even more than that, for every one negative response. So it was hard to know what to do with that wasn't dismissive. So that was a surprise. It didn't happen often, but it was always tricky. So good surprises and hard surprises.
Which leads to something that I want to talk a little bit. So, and actually, I think I'll mention it now. So you did a TED Talk. And when was that?
2022. Okay. A couple of years ago.
So I guess 4 or 5 years, 5 years after. And there were some things you shared in there that I think kind of tie in that I want to touch on.
Sure.
Before we get to that, though, most of the responses were overwhelmingly good. So I want to hear, because I know the Facebook community page that now is, grown quite a bit bigger. But when you finally went in, what did you see? When you're like, okay, this is finally I got let in by an admin, what did you see there?
Oh man, I started hearing all the different ways that people all the reasons why people responded. So maybe it wasn't self-harm, but it was all those other life experiences or circumstances that were tricky. A couple of stories. There was a gal in Newberg who came up to me probably 6 months after our accidental movement happened. And she said, I had a neighbor who reached out to me and told me that my "You are worthy of love" sign in my yard was like her daily rallying cry because she was trying to leave an abusive relationship.
Wow.
And every time she saw my grass, that message, it inspired her to continue to find a safe way to leave that relationship. And I thought, oh my gosh. Just outside of Newberg, 6 months after the movement, again, there was a man in Salem, Oregon. He was having a rough time. I don't know him personally, but he sent me a little bit of his story. He was driving to pick up pizza on a Friday night for his family, and he was struggling with depression, but it was pretty invisible to most people in his life. He was driving home after picking up the pizza and decided that when he got home, he would end his life. On that drive home, he decided to take a nostalgic route that he used to walk as a young boy to school. And then it was on that other way home that he saw something in someone's yard that took him by surprise. Right place, right time, a sign that said, "Don't give up." He pulls over his car. He's weeping in his car with the smell of pizza filling it. And he resolves that he's going to go home and tell his family he's not well and he needs help. So he goes home, he tells his family he does seek help. And then a couple months later, he writes a letter, an anonymous letter to the address of where he saw it at the sign and said, "You didn't cure my depression with your sign. It's been really hard work. I've been going to therapy. I needed to ask for help, but you did save my life that night. And I wanted you to know." When we got that message, it was, oh man, it's hard. It's hard to hold space for deep suffering. I mean, I have had deep suffering in my life in other forms other than depression, but that it was equally heavy and moving at the same time. And it was a flood of stories like those two ever since, story after story from local folks and also people all over the U.S.
I have so many questions that I want to get to. I know we don't have time. I mean, a couple things. I mean, you started this as, you started at one as like, you didn't expect it to turn into anything. You thought it was just going to be, hey, let's, 20-yard signs. You have a busy coaching business. Yeah. You're a mom, running a business. And just being a mom is a lot. Having a business on top of that is a lot. So how do you make space for doing it? Like, I'm sure there had to have been some hard conversations. Like, what do we do with this? Like, do we run with this and grow it, or do we keep it small? Like,
I remember one night I was talking to my husband, like, we need a bank account. We need a website. Like, this is, it's becoming a thing. Are we all in? Because this Wix website subscription is $20 a month. Like, are we in it? Are we going to keep doing, what is this? Are we going to keep doing it? And Jake's response was, yeah, we're all in. And so there was a moment of commitment pretty early on of we're not going to, we do no marketing. We do no promotion. We make zero money. We sell everything at cost. Nothing is branded. People have to Google to find out where things are from. And they do. It was helpful to go viral and then people can find us on Google, but, we were all in from the beginning. And people decided that they wanted to keep the movement happening by buying our products and doing their own rallies and handing them out at family reunions or school events or the Dave Matthews concert in the Gorge, to corporate gift bags at OHSU, to, all these different places that people would take the product and pass them out. We realized we want to continue the movement to help people facilitate these moments of hope and connection.
Yeah.
We were excited to be all in. The margin to do that waned. I was trying to fulfill orders before breakfast and then fulfill orders in between work meetings and then fulfill orders after dinner. And it became all consuming. Yeah. That's when we decided, hey, Rita Wolff, my mother-in-law, you have this office space that you rent that you're not using in Newberg. Can we use it? I need this out of my house so people can volunteer and process orders. And that happened in 2019 after we went viral. It became completely unsustainable the way we were doing it homespun in our house.
So then now you have how many volunteers?
We have, this is fantastic. Tabitha is a local gal. She comes in on Fridays. Okay. My mom, Diane Endicott, goes in on Mondays. And shout out to Brooke, a high school student who's graduating. I'm recruiting volunteers. Anyone who listens, she's graduating, but she goes in on Wednesdays after school. And that's it. I have Jessica Bertel still does our graphic design. Hey, Jess. And Vanjie, a college friend from George Fox, helps with customer service issues. And then I kind of float in between all the things, all volunteer led. No one's compensated.
Wow.
And it's a lot of work.
How many, what order of magnitude are we talking about as far as signs?
Oh, it depends.
Okay.
The signs are the most expensive product because they're the biggest and most expensive. So we sell the least amount of the yard signs. Okay. We've probably, should have looked up this number before I came. 250,000 wristbands over the last 8 years. Shout out to the Community Wellness Collective. I think they bought 20,000 of those here for Newberg. So the volume wanes, it ebbs and flows. Suicide Awareness Month, we always see spikes. We always wonder why. And then we remember, oh gosh, or Mental Health Month, or we'll get flooded and go, what is going on? Oh, there's some times I can't remember what town it was on the East Coast. We got several sign orders in a week, dozens and dozens and dozens of yard signs to the same town. Okay. And so I reach out to someone, what's going on? I'm nosy. We're shipping these, but I don't know what's happening. And they had a loss to suicide that really rocked the community, and word spread. Here's something we can do.
Yeah.
And people needed something to do. So, we've seen people respond in that way, which is really quite beautiful.
Yeah. How did you mentioned, it kind of comes back to how this all started. And I guess there's two things. Like, I'm happy to have a bunch of forks in the road.
I love it.
Take a good one.
Be patient with us, listeners.
Yes.
Lots to talk.
But it's all good, I hope. How, with the people who respond negatively, and this is getting into maybe some mental health.
Sure.
Which, you're not a mental health expert, and sure, that's maybe, if you go to see a psychiatrist, they're not going to say, oh, I see you're going through this. Well, I'm going to prescribe you a sign that says don't give up.
That's right.
Every day.
I hope they do not. That's a bad idea.
But, for the people who are in such a negative mental state, they see it, they feel shame because their whole outlook is wired to see shame.
Sure.
I'm curious how you've seen some of those and you've had to kind of reconcile it. Like, how do you look at that now or I don't know if you've come to terms with that or
Yeah, I think it took me a few days to recover. Surely it is the opposite of what we set out to do, which was to encourage people.
Yeah.
I responded I responded acknowledging people's pain. Mm-hmm. Apologizing that maybe what we had thought would be encouraging wasn't to them personally.
Yeah.
And then I have found good questions to stay curious is always a great remedy to feeling defensive or wanting to say, but other people are having a great response. And so my question that I would start to respond with is, what would you put on a sign that you think would be helpful?
Yeah.
And try to engage in dialogue. So I validate you. I see you. I'm so sorry you had that experience. What would be helpful for you to see? And I don't know. I don't think anyone responded to that question.
Yeah.
I think they wanted to share their experience and to be heard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I haven't had someone reach out like that for a very long, maybe years.
Oh, so it's pretty.
It was a handful in the first 5 or 6. Yeah.
Okay. The reason I ask is I think there's, no matter what you do, there's going to be someone who says, it's not good, but all the overwhelming positive. It definitely helps to recognize. I think the reason people didn't answer is because there probably isn't an answer.
Yeah.
If you're in that state where you're I want to give up, I don't think there's really anything until you really can get the proper help and realize that because you can be in that state, you see the most beautiful sunset, have the best dinner, and be surrounded by people you love and still feel like life is dull just because it's your brain is fortunately been wired that way. So I was just curious how you had handled that, but it sounds like it's not something that's still.
It's not, but something came to mind while you were talking. Many, many years ago, someone sent me a post on Reddit. And on Reddit, there was a guy in Portland, Oregon, so nearby here, and his post essentially said, man, a couple months ago, I was driving down the street here in Portland, and there was a yard sign in someone's yard that said, "You are worthy of love." What toxic positivity trash. And in all fairness, I totally see how our signs could fall into toxic positivity. Don't give up. You matter. You're enough. It's great. And people might see it as a way to dismiss or diminish their pain, when in reality, that is not what we're trying to do. But this guy had this negative experience and reaction of, that's so cliche and dumb, which again, sure, not mad about that. But he said, a few months later, I went through a really hard breakup. and I was laying in bed and I couldn't get out of bed for days, but I was running out of food and I finally had to go out and go to the grocery store. I got in my car, I was driving down the road and I saw that stupid sign again. But this time, instead of being irritated and dismissing it, I pulled over and I cried because it is exactly the message I needed to hear.
Wow.
So here's a story of someone where, okay, first impression, this is dumb, which again, I understand. And then in a moment where you just need a sign, you just need a random encounter, a random fresh encounter with hope.
Yeah.
And it ended up being the very thing that he thought was dumb a couple months earlier.
Yeah. Wow. All right, I'm backing up to the other fork in the road.
Sure.
So this is even farther back.
Okay.
And this is kind of what led, again, it ties into the TED Talk.
Okay.
The thing that you mentioned was the Hope Pathways and Agency.
Yeah.
Touch on that. But
let's do it.
But for you, the way this all started was with what happened with your brother.
Yes.
And you made a promise. And I feel like that ties into all that. So can you share a little bit about that experience, whatever you're willing to share, and how that ties into this?
Yeah. When I was 3 weeks before starting as a freshman in high school here in Newberg, my brother Jeremy was entering his senior year in Newberg. It was August 9th, 1998. And after Sunday school, a bunch of friends decided to go swimming at Hag Lake. It was a nice day. So we go home, pack all our things. We all meet there at Hag Lake. And my brother Jeremy, 18 at the time, a group of them swam across an inlet of the lake while me and a friend stayed on shore. And it wasn't too long after they left that I started to hear a commotion, kind of walked around the bend and saw that my brother was struggling in the water. He was an athlete. He knew how to swim. It was a large body of water that he wasn't used to. So that day, Jeremy died and drowned in Hag Lake. And that is a whole nother podcast. Yeah. But a year after, I remember it was the 1 year anniversary. I was sitting in my bedroom. I was reading my Bible. I was praying. And I read a commentary in my Bible about the prophetess Anna, who lost her husband, was a widow for a really long time, and yet went into the temple to share hope anytime she could. And the commentary was her best was yet to come. God could use her as a spokesperson for him. And outside the faith, this might sound wonky, but as a person of faith, it was deeply encouraging. I remember resolving that night on my bed, I'm going to use my pain to help other people. And it has happened in very strange forms. I mentioned mentoring a couple girls who lost their brother, whose grandma founded Provoking Hope in McMinnville, and finding different connections where I was a teenager. I lost my brother. I was navigating my parents' grief, all freshman year of high school. Like, it was such an interesting time to go through trauma, and resolving that I was just going to turn it outward instead of turning it inward and going dark. And it has been beautiful. So when the night our friend talked about the suicide rates in 2017, this compulsion to do something, other people are in pain. I get that. I have to do something. I think it's the action-oriented part of me and willing to walk in some hard, messy, dark spaces. Being unafraid of other people's pain has been a gift of my trauma.
Yeah. And that's, I think, what I want to explore a little bit. In the TED Talk, if you haven't listened to it, listeners, I recommend checking it out. I'll have it linked in the show notes. But you talk about hope, pathways, and agency. Yeah. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Are so important.
Yeah, it's. I think hope is, well, actually, this is behind the scenes TED Talks. Listen, they're a thing. I coach TED Talk speakers. So I hope you don't watch my TED Talk and think she sucks, because this is what I do for a living.
It was good.
Is I coach people. But the hardest part about hope is it's really cliche and it's not very novel. And we have lots of thoughts about it or connotations with it. So the biggest challenge of a TED Talk is find something that's novel that people haven't heard 1,000 times. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you, it is very difficult when people say, Amy, I wanted to do a TED Talk. How do I do it? What's your one idea? And someone will say, overcoming adversity. And I want to say, we've all heard it. It's really hard to come up with something novel that people haven't heard before. So when I knew I was asked to talk about hope in light of the Don't Give Up movement for 2 years, because COVID kept rescheduling it, I was overthinking what is the novel, unique angle. And then I read the book, The Science of Hope, and it referenced the work of a social psychologist, Richard Snyder.
Science of Hope. I need to
write it down.
I'm just going to write this down. Okay.
Yeah. And he found through research that hope required 3 things. Number 1, hope itself. So hope, not a wishful outcome, not wishing for something, but actually a positive desired outcome for your life. So maybe it might sound like goals, inspirational goals, but they're obtainable and you don't just wish for them. They're like on paper. You've defined them. So hopeful, positive desired outcomes. Number 2, he found that hope requires pathways. Pathways are the action we take to achieve the hope. So we have to feel like there's a way to achieve these goals.
Yeah.
And then the third, which became the novel angle of my talk on hope, is agency. Agency is the belief in our own ability, power, or influence around us or in our lives to do something. And so if we believe in our ability, have pathways to achieve, then we will reach our hopeful goals for ourselves. And this framework was really helpful for me because it made hope a little bit more tangible. Like, oh, okay, we say what we want out loud, a healthy marriage relationship, a really successful career, maybe to do a TED Talk. I bet some people want to do that who are listening. Okay, what are the pathways that I can do that? Well, we can go to therapy if the marriage isn't working well. Well, I can take an internship that definitely is not the end goal, but helps me on my way. Mm-hmm. And then agency is, let's say you didn't get the job or there's a setback, some sort of betrayal in the marriage. It's, do you believe in your ability to overcome?
Yeah. And I feel like that's for so many people, and actually including myself for some things, I feel like that's the missing piece. And this is kind of getting to, maybe, I don't know, these are the kind of things I like talking about, like on the side, maybe outside of the realm of this podcast, but in a sense, I actually don't think so, because there is a pathway, and like pathways in hope aren't actually that hard to find. For example, like this is a classic example of like losing weight. Everyone knows if you exercise more, if you eat healthy, you're going to lose weight, but they don't believe that they can actually do it.
Ooh, sure.
And because if you knew like, hey, if you do these things in 1 week, you'll, you'll have dropped 50 pounds. Everyone would do it that needed to. And it's the like, well, I don't want to it's harder to try and fail than it is to like push, or it's harder to try and fail than to say, well, I just won't do it at all.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe that it's actually possible for you, and every time you take a step in that direction, you're reminded of your own like inadequacy and like shame.
Yeah.
It's kind of this like weird thing, but I've thought about this a lot. There's another thing called have you heard of the motivation equation?
No.
I feel like you might like this. If I can actually remember it now, but basically it's, I'm going to pull it up. Sorry, listener, you're not going to be able to see this, but,
lean typing on the keyboard.
I don't want to get it wrong.
Fact checking as we go.
Motivation equation. Okay. So it's the motivation equals the expectancy and the value divided by the impulsivity and the delay. So the expectancy is, like how likely do you think it's going to be that you're going to receive, how likely it is that you're going to get the reward.
Okay.
And then the value is how good is that reward. Okay. So for example, like if someone says like, hey, if you do 100 push-ups, I'll give you a penny. Then you're like, okay, well, obviously it's like right there that, I just have to do 100 push-ups, but is it worth a penny? I'm probably not going to do it. The value is really low. The expectancy is high.
Can you do 100 push-ups?
Over a long period of time, not in a row. That's
a high number you gave.
Let's do 20.
Okay, great. I don't know if I do that for 20 bucks.
Yeah. Yeah. But if someone's like, hey, I'll give you $1,000 if you do a push-up, or let's say I'll give you $100 if you do a push-up, like every single day for a year. Like, gosh, like, is that actually like, as far in the future? And then the other part of that is like the delay. If it's really far in the future, like $10,000 in 30 years,
sure.
Like, versus, and then the impulsivity is like, how distractible are you? So anyway, all these things work together. We think of like investing in retirement. Like we know the value is high, like being able to, not be bankrupt when you're an adult, but there's like that expectancy that's like, I don't know, how likely is that? Like anything could happen. And then delay, like the farther it is away. Anyway, so this is something I think about a lot, and it's hard to, if you're not actually looking at it, and even if you are, sometimes it can still be confusing, but all this ties into agency. So like the impulsivity, the expectancy, like how likely is it? So for example, like just like a losing weight example, like the agency has to do with like, okay, the value may be like high, like, hey, I want to be healthy, but how likely do I think I'm able to do that? And do I have what it takes to do that?
Yeah.
And sometimes like, okay, why not do like one squat like a day? Well, it's like, well, like, is there actually value in that? So, but also it like every time you take action that you're afraid won't work, you're seeing like, it's reminding you of the reason you're taking action, which is something you don't like about yourself. So it's kind of this weird like circle, sure. But I think about this a lot because I like, for me trying to like, get back in shape and exercise. I'm like, okay, what's actually making me do it or not do it? Or why do I eat late snacks at night when I know I probably shouldn't, because it's not healthy. And, but it's that agency piece. And I think back when your brother died, like, which is like a horrible, tragic thing. And you decided I want to do something with that instead of turning in on yourself and feeling sorry for yourself, which you very easily could have done. And many people do that. So I'm curious, is there anything you point to that you think was like why you were like, and maybe it's just you're wired that way, or do you
should get my mom back on here and ask her what I was like as a kid.
Yeah, I wish I'd known.
I don't know. I don't know. In hindsight, when I think of, I have a 14, 15, she'd be so mad. She's 15 now. She turned 15 last week, but she's the age essentially that I was when I lost Jeremy, when I witnessed his death. And I look at her and suddenly I have so much compassion for myself when I was 14. I can't fathom Avery, my daughter, going through something like that at her age. And that's where I was at. Like, that was me. Like, I almost have, in hindsight, this deep compassion for this 14-year-old girl who had to grow up so fast, had to reconcile her faith with her suffering so quickly, reconcile kind of social stigma around the girl who lost her brother. Like, there were so many things that I had to juggle. And I don't know how I came out unscathed. I almost feel like it was miraculous. I didn't have survivor's guilt. I was there and I didn't try to save him. I don't have fear of water. I was not angry in my faith context. I didn't feel angry with God. I just accepted I would not understand.
Wow.
Yeah. And it afforded me a lot of peace. And to be honest, it was very confusing. The first 3 or 4 months, I remember begging God for tears. Something's wrong with me. My parents are sending their friends into my room to ask if I'm okay. Like, it just being okay actually felt like something was broken. I remember begging God for tears. The irony is that my husband will tell you that I will cry the love of a time. So, whoops, sorry, babe. I guess God answered my prayers.
Sometimes God takes a while to answer prayers.
Whoopsies. So I don't know the answer to your question. I don't know why or what capacity, positive upbringing, emotional safety, beautiful parents, a deep faith in God that allows me to wrestle and reconcile this suffering and sovereignty idea. So it's probably a few things.
Yeah.
But I wonder if my parents would say my personality of just feeling urgent.
Yeah.
They would probably call it impatient or stubborn, but it might have benefited me well. So this TED Talk, to zoom back out, so this idea of agency and then that being the angle of the talk, it's really why the whole Don't Give Up movement started. There was pain and suffering. It felt like there were no pathways. I am not qualified at all, not qualified at all. And yet this maybe audacious feeling of agency of, I got to do something. And that something became something for a lot of people still 8 years later. But it was this idea of I claimed my agency and then I took the pathway in action and it facilitated hope for people, which I didn't write my goal on paper. I'm not really a big goal setter, but to impact people in a positive way was the hopeful outcome that I would have defined if you asked me. And so it really, those definitions of hope, those factors of hope in the research played out in this experience here in Newberg in 2017.
Yeah. What would you, I guess another question, another angle is like, do you look to people who've like really inspired you in your life?
Oh, well, so cliche. Are you ready? My mom and dad. Hi. Okay. They're phenomenal people. You've not met my dad, Jim, but Jim Endicott is a fantastic human being. They have modeled for me a lot. You can only imagine if you lose one child at 18 that you would start to shelter your 14-year-old. They said my dad told me recently, getting your license and seeing you drive away was one of the most emotionally hard decisions, to let you go and live your life and not shelter you. Wow. So hero, not in the way of maybe a big public platform, but in the ways that they demonstrated love when it was the most hard, wisdom when it was the most hard, even just within our own family unit. I think, which brings me to a little bit of a different angle. I think sometimes we have this idea of making an impact that is really big. And yes, the Don't Give Up movement became big. And that's why we were in the Washington Post. And that's why we went viral, and Good Morning America, and then a book deal, and then a TED Talk. And then, yes, I get it. That wasn't the goal. And I think we discredit when we claim our agency, maybe like my parents did in the midst of their suffering, losing a child. And we downplay because it only affected me, maybe some of their decisions. Certainly that's not true. They've shared their story and helped other people. But I wonder if people listening is like, well, I'm never going to start a movement. I don't have the capacity. I'm not qualified. I don't know what the thing would be. I don't know what I'm passionate about. The idea of claiming your agency and taking a pathway is do it small. Don't do it big. And I have found... I myself have found moments of hope in my suffering and pain, which has been not just losing my brother, but through so many things. I don't have a perfect life. That people's little choices and decisions and how they showed up for me has made an immense difference for me. So in this awesome story of bigness, I hope people here are motivated or inspired for acts of smallness too.
Yeah. That's a really good point, because you started, the Don't Give Up movement, but each person who put the sign in the yard,
that's right,
was the one. It's the
small thing.
Yeah.
It's a small thing, and we only exist because people still want to buy our products.
Yeah,
we don't market it, we don't push it. So legitimately, our movement is based on the smallness of little decisions of buying a thing, a decal on your car, a sign in your yard. We are a movement of smallness that creates a larger impact. Yeah.
No, I think that's really good. And I think that's, because I am the kind of person, I have very audacious goals that have kind of, in some ways it's great. In other ways it's like, okay, wow. Like that was like really ambitious. And then when you're like, okay, I came to like a fraction of that, it can feel demoralizing. But I think recognizing like, what's like one thing I can do to help, or like, what's one kind thing I can do for someone today, or like find whatever that is, like for whoever the person is, like what matters to you, and like what's the like smallest thing you could do that has any impact. And I think that way, because like, I mean, putting a sign in the yard and like what you did, like didn't take a ton of effort. I mean, there's like steps, logistics to go through. But yeah, I think the agency is, maybe you don't have an agency, just the belief in yourself to start a movement, but what do you have that for? And maybe it's just smiling at someone. And I think there's a lot to be said for like, just those small, kind words. So yeah, I think that's a good answer.
I mean, as you were talking, I thought of another small story in high school. And I was a typical high school student. I'm sure I was irritating to a lot of people, but I remember going to youth group and having a bunch of those candy necklaces in my pocket. And I was just handing them out to kids at our church youth group. 4 years later, I got an envelope and a letter from someone I went to high school with. I guess she went to youth group a few times. And it was a half-eaten candy necklace. And I was very confused. This is a very weird note to get. But the note said, "You probably don't remember. You gave me this necklace years ago. You were handing them out to a bunch of people and you gave one to me. What you didn't know is I felt like an outsider. I felt like an outcast. I didn't belong. And the fact that you would give me one along with all these other people made me feel seen. And I kept it for years. And now I want you to know that we don't know. We don't know when we do something so small. And for me, it was flippant. I don't remember doing that I don't remember being intentional. I was slinging those things around. And yet, I mean, what a beautiful example of we just don't know the impact. As cheesy or cliche as it sounds, as a smile or paying for someone's coffee. Or for me, we've been going through a family crisis and note on my doorstep, flowers showing up, a candy dropped off by someone. Like, these are profound. And I think we need to be more bold to do it. And even letting go of the outcome, hoping that there is someone who is moved and will remember forever these acts of kindness that we do.
You mentioned something that's subtle but significant, the letting go of the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's actually bigger than, I think a lot of times we have to say, I want to do this so that it does this. And if we don't see the result, I'm like, well, that didn't make a difference, but you don't know.
Yeah.
And it may be years, but that girl didn't have to, she could have just as easily never said anything.
Yeah.
Never would have known. And I think when you let go of the outcome and just say, I'm going to choose to live my life in a way that makes other people's lives, or at least I'm attempting to make other lives better, at least have a positive net influence on the world. But not being tied to like, I have to see that immediate result. I mean, even with like what I do, like sometimes it's like, I don't get very many emails or messages every once in a while since like, I listened to your podcast. It was good. It's like, oh, cool. Thanks. Like,
yeah,
but I don't know the stories of people who hear it and are moved. And sometimes I've thought like, is this even worth it? Like, does it matter? But every once in a while when I get those messages, I'm like, I bet there's probably people who never say anything, who listen. That's my hope, is that someone can listen to an episode and say, wow, that really moved me, or that inspired me to get involved in town or do something. So anyway, thank you for that, because that's a good reminder.
Oh my gosh. Lynn, I launched a book during COVID called Signs of Hope about the movement because a literary agent randomly reached out to me from New York, never met the guy, and it started a big process. But I remember I had friends going, oh my gosh, this is the start of something, Amy. Like, we are here for it. We're cheering you on. And I thought, oh my gosh, my life's about to explode. I'm going to get big platforms. And my book did terrible. And terrible. And then the TED Talk, oh my gosh, it's going to go viral. No, it didn't. So there's like this, I'm so glad that I already did that inner work of hold outcomes loosely. And volume doesn't always validate the effort.
Yeah.
And I did that inner work so much that when the book was like, and I get quarterly statements from the publisher about royalties, and it's like, you sold $3. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is humiliating every 3 months. But you gotta let it go.
Yeah.
Like, we can't let our egos or our pride or our sense of self-worth get wrapped up in our generosity, or our wisdom or our kindness or our story. There is an important lesson in here somewhere for us that's like, you do it with open palms, open-handed, expecting nothing in return, not being disappointed in people's reactions. You did this really nice thing and they didn't seem grateful. Open-handed. Like, this is part of the work.
Yeah. It's funny. I've had similar experiences, like, oh my gosh, like this big day, like I did one with the Street of Dreams years ago, and they're a huge organization. They have 11,000 followers. Like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get like thousands of listens. I think like 80 people.
Yes. Oh, it's so beautiful.
And I was like, this is gonna like change the trajectory of my life. And it's like, nothing.
Yeah.
How immature I'm making farting sounds on a podcast, but hopefully listeners.
Nothing to prove.
Yeah, exactly. Humility. No, I think that's really good. Well, I think we are probably approaching the end of our time here. So, I guess there's two questions I always ask people. What gives you hope? Like, what gives you hope for the future of Newberg? Which is funny that you made all these signs about hope, but what personally gives you hope?
My daughters, they're awesome human beings, and they're in the public school system. And oh man, the things we've had to navigate with my freshmen in high school of, you saw what photo from who, from what app? It's not her, it's going, like, you just see things. And so there's like been messy stuff, and oh my gosh, the era that our kids are in, and is so different than when I was in Newberg High School. And I will say, I see her friends, I see both my daughters, and they are compassionate humans that are fallible and capable of so much good and empathy. And so I think I've been aching for Newberg as much as I ache for Portland. I love Portland as much as I'm aching for the US, as much as I'm aching for the world. And yet I see they're not dumb adolescents. They're not half brains, fully, half developed. They're not, that generation on their phones. There is an amazing future generation that's rising up and cares about social justice issues, and seeing people and as not just a single story of one part of who they are. I am so thrilled when I look at the young people. No, I don't want to put a label on them as this kind of generation. I am so hopeful. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. I think we discredit our youth. Yeah. I think they're amazing, amazing humans that are going to shape our future. And then also seeing the people that you interview on your podcast, there's so much good. There's so many good humans here in Newberg. So many. And that makes me hopeful that we can do hard things. We can disagree, and it's okay. We don't have to dehumanize each other to do it. That's okay. And there are people that are trying to do that, including some elected officials that I'm really proud of, because they're kind of pissing off everybody because they're not choosing a side and going all in. And that gives me hope, a lot of hope.
Yeah. What's one message that especially because this all started in Newberg, what's the message that you want to give to our town?
Thank you, Newberg. I did not think about this question in advance, but it was you. It was you opening up your yards and saying yes to a stranger who knocked on the door with her daughter to win you over. It was you who said, well, I want one in my yard. It was you who started this movement. I think we had over 100 yard sign orders in the first week, and it was all Newberg. Wow. And then someone drove through Newberg from out of town, and then it traveled, and then it spread. But thank you. Thank you for doing something as small as a yard sign in your yard, and it became a thing, and it helped people. And I know because they send me their stories.
Amy, thank you so much. Mm-hmm. One, obviously, for being on the podcast, but two, for taking that step and not just sitting with that feeling of, I should do something, and actually doing something, and letting go of the outcome and then running with what came. I think it's safe to say that I think obviously there's many ways that you've changed our town, and you've changed many lives and, across the country and the world. So appreciate it. And thank you for this story too. I think it's so helpful to know that you don't have to go in it thinking that you're going to change the world. It's some things may flop, some things may work, but very encouraging.
Good. Thanks for having me.
Hey everyone, I hope you found this episode informative and inspiring. If you know someone who might also enjoy it, please consider sharing it with them. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our semi-monthly newsletter with the link in the show notes. Well, thanks again for listening and doing your part to make this an amazing community.